And those are the latest headlines. Time now for Our World, and this week there's an uncompromising look at the rise of Buddhist nationalism in Myanmar and the extremist views of one of the movement's leading figures. The programme contains scenes of violence and use of language which some viewers may find disturbing.
After decades of dictatorship, Myanmar is now on the road to greater democracy. But with newfound freedoms, the country previously known as Burma has seen the bloody settling of old scores. An aggressive nationalist movement is on the rise. Its target, the small Muslim minority. Buddhist mobs, often including monks, have rampaged, leaving many dead and Muslim communities living in fear. I'm Jonah Fisher, and in this Our World, I'm going to be finding out how monks from Myanmar, or Burma as it used to be known, have come to be associated with waves of religious violence. I meet the controversial monk who's been blamed for the rising tension and labelled the Burmese Bin Laden. And I speak to the old guard, concerned that hard-won progress is now being put at risk. This is Mandalay, in central Myanmar, last capital of the Burmese kings. This city of monks and monasteries is the throbbing heart of this unique country's religious and cultural life. Myanmar is home to about 60 million people. There are small Muslim and Christian populations here, but 90% of the people follow the same ancient religion. In a classroom at one of Mandalay's most famous monasteries, a teacher is at work. This is Wiratu. He's taking his class of novice monks through the key beliefs that underpin the Buddhist faith. The 5 precepts, as they're known, are the foundations of the religion. They prohibit killing, stealing, lying, drinking alcohol, and today's lesson, sexual misconduct. This is a lesson you might see at any Buddhist monastery. But Wiratu is no ordinary monk, because when he's not teaching Buddhist philosophy, he preaches about the dangers of a Muslim takeover. In the last year, Wiratu has become the most controversial Buddhist in this country, quite possibly the world.
This one is of Rakhine State.
Yes. As we look around the monastery, Wiratu shows me some posters outside his classroom. They show the victims of violent clashes between Buddhists and Muslims. These were the scenes in western Myanmar last year. The rape and murder of a Buddhist woman triggered violence between the Buddhist population and local Muslims, known as Rohingya, who are stateless under Burmese law. As the security forces looked on, and sometimes participated, at least 150 people, most of them Muslim, were killed, and more than 100,000 driven from their homes. Wiratu's posters only show the Buddhist victims of the violence.
Horrific pictures. Really shocking.
Most of the images are just too gruesome for us to show.
And what about this poster?
As we talked, young monks came out of the buildings to watch. Whether suspicious or just curious, every time we spoke to Wiratu, we too were being filmed.
You're saying that if Muslims are in big groups, that they will naturally attack Buddhists?
In the last 2 years, Myanmar has changed fast. From being one of the world's most repressive dictatorships, it's now making strides towards democracy. Political prisoners have been released, and the most famous of them all, Aung San Suu Kyi, sits in parliament, with ambitions to become president. But transition has also brought uncertainty and a chance to settle old scores. Like many monks, Wiratu's life has been dedicated to the study of Buddhism. Aged just 13 and against his parents' wishes, he left home to study and live a religious life. Wiratu's anti-Muslim views have changed little since he first came to prominence more than a decade ago. Then his hate speech was blamed for inciting religious riots, and he ended up in jail. Now that he's been released, Wiratu is free to preach wherever he wants. The contents of this sermon are familiar. Buddhist parables mixed with warnings about the minority Muslim population. This crowd of mostly women are told that Muslim men are determined to marry and convert them. Despite Muslims making up only about 5% of the population, Wiratu says that the Muslim practice of taking multiple wives is part of an aggressive plan for Islam to become Myanmar's main religion. Wiratu's outspokenness and willingness to court controversy have turned him into a standard-bearer for what's become known as the 969 movement.
Just up the road from where Wiratu speaking is a stall selling various bits of merchandise. These are all DVDs of Wiratu's sermons and speeches. This one contains graphic footage of the violence in Rakhine State in western Myanmar last year. These here are all books which Wiratu wrote during the 9 years he spent in jail. And these here are the stickers of the 969 movement. Now, these are the stickers which are put on Buddhist businesses, Buddhist taxis, to denote the fact that they are Buddhist and to encourage people to use them instead of Muslim shops. How do you think Muslims feel about your sticker? As news of the clashes in the West has spread, anti-Muslim sentiment has risen in other parts of the country. We're now on our way to a town called Mektilla. Now, Mektilla saw some of the worst of the religious violence in March of this year.
The violence was filmed on mobile phones and camcorders. Following a dispute at this Muslim-owned goldsmith's, a Buddhist monk was killed. In revenge attacks, at least 40, possibly as many as 80 people, almost all of them Muslim, were killed. This footage shows a young man being savagely beaten by a mob that includes a Buddhist monk. Whether overwhelmed or just unwilling, the police did not step in to stop Muslims being attacked. Tet Nang was a 21-year-old Muslim and a promising young footballer with the local team in Mektila. As the violence broke out in March, he left his home, never to return. His mother and young brother are still in shock. Their house was one of the few Muslim homes in the neighborhood that was not destroyed in the attacks. Tet Nang's body was burnt beyond recognition.
Do you have any idea who did this to him?
I asked Chi-Chi who she blamed for the death of her son. As we spoke to Chi-Chi, the secret police arrived at her door. Our short interview was over. The police demanded to see our press accreditation and took us away for questioning for several hours. Driving through Mektila, I was shocked at the scale of the damage from the March attacks. Shops, homes, businesses, whole streets destroyed by Buddhist mobs. Those Muslims who remain live in fear of more attacks. I met up with a Muslim lawyer. Ong Tain didn't want to be seen talking to me on the street, so from the back of our vehicle he showed me around town.
How many of the Muslim shops and businesses in Mektila were destroyed?
About 1,000 over.
More than 1,000 shops?
This is the Tiri Mingala Mosque being burnt and looted as police look on. All but one of Mektila's 13 mosques were vandalized and shut down in the March attacks. Ong Tain told me that he believed the local authorities were trying to stop displaced Muslims returning and picking up their lives. Back in Mandalay, I showed Wiratu some of the footage